All right, audio is on. So we are capturing audio. It's enhanced for speech, so we should be good. All right. So we went with the wire. We found a wire. So this seems to work. We'll just go. It's already live. Here's Neil. There's the screen.
It's all yours, so you tell me whatever you need.
Few minutes.
It's all yours. So all the staff are here to assist with anything you need, you know.
Alright, cool.
I'm gonna be stepping off, but I'll be back, you know, so.
Alright, sounds good.
We'll try to control the volume a little.
Whenever you're ready to go, let me know so I can get their attention.
Yeah, get their attention, and then you are good to go. APPFest.
Yep.
Alexa. App skill.
Alright, everyone, can I get your attention, please? Alright, I want you to pay attention to Mr. Neil. He's gonna work with you on an APPFest. He's gonna help you create. Remember the upper bound rules. Student goes off, your plugs go away, put your phones away. Please pay attention, alright? Have fun. Enjoy.
Alright, hey everyone. So my name is Niall, and I work at a technology company in the city of Houston. We do a lot of cool stuff using cutting edge technology to like help people and stuff like that. So one thing I want to know is what do y'all want to do when y'all grow up? Like once y'all graduate high school, do y'all have any ideas of like what careers you're interested in?
Journalism, yeah.
Journalism?
Computer science.
Nursing? You said computer science? Cool. What'd you say? Biology? All right. So one thing that's important to know is that a lot of these jobs, is it working? No.
It's off.
Okay.
All
All right. So, hello? All right. All right. So one thing that y'all should know is that a lot of the careers that y'all just mentioned, technology is going to be very influential in changing those jobs. One person mentioned biology. There's so many people that are using computers in ways that are revolutionary now than they were a couple of years ago. Journalism is radically being changed in the wave of technology because of apps and different technologies like Twitter, things of that nature. So the way that we think of our careers currently, it might not be the same way we're thinking about it in the future. When you graduate high school, when you graduate college, it might not even be what it looks like now. So if you are able to master or understand technology to a certain extent, it will be immensely helpful in how you understand your career and advancing yourself in the career. So with this, I'm going to be teaching y'all how to make, have y'all heard of Alexa? How many of y'all have an Alexa? All right, so did y'all know that y'all can actually make stuff, so y'all can make apps for phones, you can make your own skill for Alexa. So you could actually, like, if you wanted to, you can make something where you say, hey Alexa, can you order me a pizza? And it'll actually order you a pizza for you. You can make something like that, all right? So in this kind of session, I'm gonna be teaching y'all basically how to make one of these skills, all right? So the first thing that we're gonna need is, we're gonna first need to download this programming language called Python. So first off, do any of y'all know how to program or a little bit of programming? If not, it's totally fine. That's good. It's great to know that it's okay if you don't know anything about programming. This entire lecture or workshop is going to be centered from understanding the basics of Python, and then at some point y'all will be able to learn how to make an Alexa skill. So what we're going to do is go to python.org, all right? You're going to go to this website right here. And I'm not, so also, how many of y'all have HCC laptops? Oh, dang. So I'm not sure if y'all be able to download this, but let's see if it allows for you to download. If so, and it installs appropriately, we should be good to go. But if not, you can still follow along with me on the PowerPoint, or on the presentation. All right, so we're then going to go to downloads right here. And I'm pretty sure most of y'all have Windows computers. So if you have a Windows computer, click Windows. Then, once you click Windows, you're going to click this version. It says latest Python release 2.7. You're going to click that. You're going to scroll down, and it's going to say Windows x86-64. You're going to click that. All right. So while it's downloading, I'm going to tell you all a little bit about myself. So actually I go to U of H downtown. So I work at this tech company and I go to school part-time. A lot of what I've learned on how to program has been purely online. It's never been something that I had to go take a college class for or things of that nature. And what I've been able to learn online has allowed for me to work at this amazing company. And I think that all of y'all in this room have the ability to learn this skill in such a way that you don't necessarily need to go to college to be able to make amazing technology and possibly work in the tech industry. All right. So when it's done downloading, click the file, and so I already have this downloaded, so it's going to be different for me. But for y'all, when it's finished downloading, I would click it, and then it's going to ask you a bunch of questions. Just click yes throughout the entire process. It should work totally fine. All right. So it will look. You'll see something that looks like this, and then okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm connected to HCC Public. If you are connected to a different Wi-Fi, I would recommend connecting to that Wi-Fi for this demonstration.
HCC laptop allow downloading
via they might not allow it. So if it doesn't allow you to download, you'll still be able to go through and follow along with the presentation. And if you want, like the code that I'm writing, I could send it to you guys afterwards. It's not letting y'all. Dang.
They're not able to download. So all these computers that they can't download. The computers that they bought, they can't download.
Okay. Yeah, I figured. All right.
Is there a Python web you like fight the thing?
I think so. Let me see. But they wouldn't be able to do the Alexa skill part. But I could still like show them without them having it coded.
Okay, I mean.
Alright, so quickly, just around the room. You may have to just group up around a computer that does have access to connecting with Python. So show of hands if you're able to install Python on your laptops, and then again just group up around that laptop, so that way we can still make this work. And you know the HCC laptops have an admin issue. We don't have an HCC admin to help us with that, but we'll still be able to do this. And we'll still make this video available so that you can see and follow on regular computers that have admin access. Okay? So once again, group up around people, around laptops that does have admin access.
So we can do some Python online through this website. Okay. They just won't be able to make the Alexa skill, but I can still like.
Okay. Right. And then now this has another solution where if you wanted to actually code part of it on the Python on web, that doesn't require any permissions to download. So you could also follow some of the coding components on this website that he's got loaded up, python.org/shell. And again, we won't be able to do the full Alexa app with the web version, but at least you'll get to practice with the code itself. So this way, now we'll do both.
Yeah.
Okay, and this will slowly walk us into building it and seeing it in action. Okay?
All right. So if you want to be able to follow along and do a little bit of programming, you can go to python.org/show, and I'm going to teach y'all some of the basics of Python programming. And then after we get some of the basics down, I'm going to show you how I would build an Alexa skill. And you don't necessarily have to follow along on that part, but I will have the code, like the finalized code, ready for anyone who wants to have access to it. So if you get to your own personal computer, you can test the code out, make some tweaks to it yourself, and basically learn how to program from this. All right? So Python is a very easy language to learn. Many programming languages, they're like using all this complicated jargon and things of that nature that makes it very difficult to understand. But if you want to start off with simply Python, you can print something to the screen by just simply typing print hello world. So in this case, you would type print, put it in parentheses, a first quotation mark, and then type whatever you want, and then close it with the parentheses, and it'll print essentially whatever you want. All right. So there are different types of So in algebra, right? You see how x will somebody will say x equals whatever number, right? X equals 4 in this case, or whatever. That is what in algebra they say is a variable, and in Python we have similar syntax. So if you want to assign a value to a random letter or string or whatever, you can do so simply doing this way. So x equals, say string, and it assigns that value string to the thing x. All right. So if you were to print that thing out, you can say print, and instead of using string, you can just put x, which is the variable name. It'll print string instead of printing x. There are many different types of variables in Python. So the first one that I mentioned was a string. A string could be any type of word, list of characters. You can also assign numbers. So say y equals 44. That is another type of variable that you can use, numbers. You can also do decimal numbers. So z equals 1.2. And then if you were to print, you can print that. It'll actually print the actual number out to the screen for you. So what I did right here, it says print string or strz. There are different types of functions that allow for you to convert certain data structure or certain variables into other variables. So because z was 1.3, it wasn't a string variable, it was an integer variable. So you can convert it from an integer to a string by using the str function.
Can we get it zoomed in?
Yeah.
You could do Windows plus or Control plus.
Yeah. Just gonna.
Whichever way. If we can get it larger. We're gonna try to make the fonts a little larger.
Can I see that?
Zoom in a little bit more. And then you could also zoom into your desktop. Windows. All right, better? Can we see it? Yes? Okay, there you go. All right, thank you.
Oh. Wait, do you have a question? All right, so there are other types of variables as well. So there's one type of variable called a list. And a list essentially stores a variety of things in a structure that you can save to. So you might have like with a backpack. A list is essentially a backpack where you can put things into it. So we'll make a list called A. So you can make a list by simply using the bracket notate or the brackets. So the shift and or the all right. So these brackets allow for you to make a list. So when you make a list like this is essentially an empty list. If you want to add something to that particular list, you can say a dot append, and then 4. All right, and then we say print. And now you see that 4 is actually in that list. So if we were to append something else to the list, I just typed it. All right. So as you see that there are 2 things in that list now because we added 4 and 5 into the list. All right. There's another type of structure called a dictionary, and a dictionary is kind of like an actual dictionary that you use. In a dictionary, you have a word and you have a definition associated with that particular word. And it's similar, and this is a dictionary in Python is similar to that, where if we have B, we'll use the curly brackets instead of the square brackets. And then you first create the key. The key is like the word in the dictionary. So we'll say name. Then you use a colon. And then the variable that follows will be any type of variable that you want to be associated with that name. In this case, I'm going to use my name. So say Nile. Right? Wait. Oh, I see. Yeah. So I gotta put an equal sign. Sorry. So B equals. All right. Now, in order to access the variable inside of this list, you can simply do B and then use square brackets, and then the key that you decide. So we have the key being my name, and then or the key being name. And then the value being my personal name, Nile. So I can just say B name. And that actually returns the value in this list, my name, Nile. If you wanted to add something to this dictionary, you can then just simply say the name of the variable, and then you can say new key, like let's say age. And then I'll put, for this case, I'll put my age, 21, right? So that actually saved a new value to the dictionary. So if we were to print out B, as you can see, there's now my name, and then there's now my age in this dictionary. And you can access those variables using the bracket notation above, all right? So essentially these are the 4 major variable types in Python that you're going to be using. You're going to be using strings, you're going to be using numbers, you're going to be using dictionaries, and you're going to be using lists. There's also another type of variable that's much more specific called a Boolean value. Boolean is short for, or not short for, but a substitution for logical notation. So Boolean values can either be a true or a false, all right? So in Python, in programming, there are certain times where you want something to run if a certain condition is met, whether something is true. If you wanted to assign something simply the true value, you can just simply type true. And now that assigns that value of true. So we can then say print print stir C, and it'll print true. You can also assign it to false. And if you were to print stir C, it'll be false. This is going to be important for later as we get into more complicated programming techniques. All right. So one of the things that's cool about Python is that Python, if you don't know anything about Python, this could be a simple basic calculator. So you can do many different types of arithmetic problems. We'll say A equals 4 and B equals 3. You can do addition. You can do A plus B, and it gives you 7 because A plus B equals 7. You can do A minus B, and you get 1 because A minus B is equal to 1. You can also do multiplication in Python, but it's different. In regular math, you use an X. In Python, you use an asterisk mark. So you shift 8 to get the asterisk mark. A times B is going to be 12 because 4 times 3 is 12. And you can also do division. You can do division in Python. 4, and then you do a forward slash. The forward slash is the division sign. 4 divided by 3 gives you this very long number, right? That nobody really wants to remember. But that's one way that you can do division. You can do another form of division in Python, which is 4 with 2 forward slashes and 3. And it returns you 1. So what that 1 means is, when you were learning division in elementary school, you would divide like 15 by 4, and you would get something like 3 remainder something, right? And this is actually doing that form of division where it tells you what the number is without the remainder. So if you were to say, I want to find out what that remainder to that particular question is, you can do 4 and then a percent symbol, right, and you get 1. So 4 divided by 3 is either 1.3 repeated or 1 remainder 1. And essentially that's what that's telling you right there. All right? So those are types of mathematical operations that you can do in Python with numbers. You can also do operations with strings. So let's say you have C equals Nile, C equals Nile, D equals Dixon. All right. So you can actually add strings together by simply doing this: C plus D. All right. And it gives you Nile Dixon. You can actually multiply a string by a particular number to get a repeated version of that string. So you could say C times 3, and you get Nile, Nile, Nile. So that's one thing that's pretty cool, is being able to, if you want to duplicate a string over and over and over, you can multiply that string by itself, by a particular number. Can't divide or subtract strings, so don't try to do something like this, because you're going to get an error. You can't subtract strings from ints, but you can multiply and add. You can multiply a string by a number, and you can add strings together. You can also do similar operations like this with lists. So we're going to have a list called D, and it's going to have 4. And we're going to have a list called E with 5. You can merge these two lists together by simply adding them by saying D plus E, and you get 4 and 5. You can also duplicate a list by saying D, let me refresh, sorry. All right, so you can multiply a list D times 3, and as you can see, D, which had 4 originally in it, and you multiplied it by 3, it duplicated the contents of that list 3 times. So if we were, let's say, make another list with a string, Nile, and then an integer of 9, and then we say F times 4, it essentially duplicates that content multiple times in the list. All right? So these are some of the basic things that you can do in Python. You can also, we're also going to get more complicated stuff such as control flow statements. A control flow essentially allows for you to control how your program operates based on certain variables. And this is where you get to more fancy things such as printing out content and interacting with different variables. One way is an if statement. So an if statement allows for you to run a line of code if a certain condition is true. So as I mentioned earlier, we have Boolean values. So when you have something like an expression, right? An expression being x equals another thing, right? That is an expression, or that's an equation rather. That equation can equal to true or equal to false. So if we say 4 or 5 equals 5, that returns true because 5 does equal 5. If 5 does not, if you say 5 equals 4, it's going to return false, right? The double equal sign is essentially something that measures for equality. So if something equals another thing, that's what that double equal sign means, all right? So when it comes to if statements, you can say something like this: if x, or if 5 equals 5, type that, and then you use a semicolon. It'll do this thing where it puts 3 dots, so you can say, so that you can type the result, or what you want it to do if that expression is true. Say 5 equals 5. Oh, okay, all right. If 5 equals 5, you're going to hit the tab, and then you're going to hit tab, and then you're going to type what you want to type. So print 5 equals, and it prints 5 equals 5 because that is true. 5 does equal 5. If we were to do that same thing, if we say if 5 equals 4, for example, hit the tab so that we can make the indentation, print 5 equals 4. You see nothing actually printed out because 5 doesn't actually equal 4. So this is one way, this is very simple, but this is one way that you can do cool stuff in Python. You can also just simply say if something is true. So if you say if true, and then say print all right, it prints high because you don't necessarily always need to have an equal something. As long as the expression evaluates to true, it will print whatever is printed, or it will run the code whatever is being run. All right. So that's an if statement. There are while statements. So while statements are similar to if statements in the sense that if the expression is true, then it will do whatever follows. But while statements mean as long as this particular thing is true, it will do what it's going to do, right? So we're going to have some little fun with this one. If you say while true, we're going to print high. So as you see, it's continuously printing high, actually. It's actually probably going to get mad at me at some point because it's going to continue to print true until something tells it that it's false. It's printing so much that they're actually going to get mad. So I'm going to refresh it right now. So that's essentially what can happen if you don't include something to actually exit or cancel the true logical operation. So we'll say while, let's do something that allows for us to actually turn it off as true, or turn it from true to false, all right? So we're going to say x is 5, right? and then we're going to say while x is less than 10, we're going to print the string version of x, and then we're going to add one number to that value. All right. So as you can see right here, while x was less than 10, it said, all right, we're going to print out x, and then we're going to add a value to x. So as you can see, it printed 5, it printed 6, it printed 7, and then it printed 8, and then it printed 9. Because 10 equals 10, it says, all right, it's false because 10 is not less than 10, so we're not going to print that out. Now, if we were to do something a little different, if you say, if while x is less than or equal to 10, we'll print out x, we'll add x equals x plus 1, and then print a string version of x. Okay, so something weird happened here. We would have thought that it was going to print out 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but instead it actually printed out just 11. So what happened? What happened was we originally set x to equal 5, and then when we ran the while statement, it actually changed the value of x. All right, so if we were to actually print out x right now, it's not going to say 5, it's going to say 11, because we were actually making changes to that. So when we ran it again, it essentially said, while x is less than or equal to 10, at that time it was equaling 10. We then added a value to it, changing it to 11, and then we printed out 11. If we were to then reassign the value of x to 5, and then say, while x is less than or equal to 10, print as you can see now, it actually prints out 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 because we reassigned the value of x to equal 5, and then we then printed out that particular information. All right. Now, there's one other general control flow statement called a for loop. A for loop essentially is a statement that iterates through something that is what we call iterable. An iterable thing is essentially an item that we can go through everything of it. All right. So an integer, for example, is not an iterable item because there are no multiple parts to an integer. It's either is or isn't a number. All right. However, when you're talking about strings, for example, or when you're talking about lists, you can actually print out all of the things in a list because the list is iterable. So we're gonna create our own list called y. Say y is gonna have 1, 2, 3, 5, and then 7. All right. Now, in order to print out everything in this list, what we're going to do is say for, and we're going to create our own variable name. We're going to say xnum in y. All right. So we'll type that, indent. We're going to print a string version of that xnum. And as you can see, it actually went through everything in that list that we created and then printed it out to the screen. So as you can see, we had a 1, we had a 2, a 3, a 5, and a 7, and now it actually printed out 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. All right. You can actually nest different control flow statements within a particular program. So if you can have a for loop. So we'll say for x in num y, we're going to then print print a string version of xnum. So then we're going to add an if statement. We're going to add an if statement that says if xnum divided by 2 equals 0. So essentially we're asking for it to find all of the even numbers, because any number divided by, no, I'm sorry, if xnum divided by 2 or modulo 2 equals 0, that essentially says if it has a remainder of 0, which means it's an even number if it's divided by 2, we're then going to print, we're going to make 2 indentations. We're then going to print even. All right, so as you see right here, it printed 1, and it said, okay, what is 1? Is 1 an even number or an odd number? It's an odd number, so we're not going to print anything. 2, is that an even number or an odd number? It's an even number, so we're going to print even to the string. Is it 3? 3, is it an even number or odd number? It's odd, so we're not going to print anything. And we're going to have 7. 7 an even number or an odd number? Because it's an odd number, it's going to print nothing. All right, so this is how you can nest for loop statements within each other in order to do more complicated things. All right. Now I'm going to get to a little bit more complicated stuff. We're going to make functions. Now, you've seen multiple times in the program where I type print and in parentheses, and then the content goes within the print statement. What print is, in this case, is a function. And that function for print, in this case, is just print whatever I pass into that particular argument, or into that particular value. But you can create your own functions in Python. So you first create a function by saying def, because you want to define the function. We're going to make an add function. All right. If you want, or let's say we're going to make a bark function. So we're going to have it so that whenever we run this function, it's going to bark. All right. So make our indentation right here. We're going to print the string bark. And now, if you want to run that function, you just simply type bark, put the parentheses next to it, and it actually will say bark to you. You can create functions that accept parameters as well. So we're going to make an add function. We're going to say def add, and then we're going to have x. We're going to have a variable named x, and then we're going to have a variable named y that we're passing into this function. So we're going to make the tab, and then we're going to have a variable named z within this add function, and we're going to make it equal to x plus. We're going to make it equal to x plus y. Then we're going to return z. Returning in this case means give back something to the user. All right. So now we're going to then say we're going to make a variable called v, and we're going to say we want to add. We're going to add 2, and then we're going to add 9. All right. Now, if you type v, you'll get 11. That's essentially what it did. Was it ended up getting those 2 numbers, adding them together, returning it to the value that we just named v, and now we can use v in future parts of our particular program. All right. Now, with all that being said, okay, all right. So you can also nest functions within other functions. So what happens is, let's say in this case we have our add function, and then we're going to make a complex add function. So we're going to say def complex add, and then we're going to accept the same 2 numbers. We're going to accept x and y. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say z equals, we're going to add x comma x and add y comma y. And then we're going to return that value of z that we've just created. All right, so to keep this simple, to show you that what it's doing, I'm going to say 1 and 2. With the function that we just created, we're essentially going to pass in 1 and 2, and it's going to say what's 1 plus 1, which is 2. Then we're going to add 2 and 2, so it's going to say what's 2 plus 2 is 4, and it's going to add those two numbers together. So 2 plus 4 being 6. So if we say complex add (1, 2), it'll print out 6, just like we want it, all right? Now, with all that being said, you can create functions and you can pass in different types of arguments. It doesn't necessarily have to be numbers. It doesn't just have to be strings. It could be any type of structure. So we're going to now we're going to do a more complex or a better add function, because let's say you want to add more than just two numbers together, all right? So we're going to say, we're going to redefine our add function. We're going to call it my list. All right? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to accept a list of items in this case, and we're going to iterate through that list and then add those numbers together. So we're going to first have a default 0. We're going to have a default number of 0. All right? So then we're going to say, okay, we're going to set a number equal to 0. Now we're going to go through each item in my list and then add it to z. So we're going to say for item, any item, it could be anything, but in this case we're going to just call it item. For item in my list, we're going to make two indentations. We're going to say z equals z plus item and now we're going to then return z. All right, so that's our function. We're going to now create a list just so that we can test it out. So we're going to make a list called x with one item, with the number 1, a number 2, a number 3, and a number 4. Now we're going to run add, and then we're going to pass in the variable that we just created called x. And as you can see, it added all of those variables up and it equals 10. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. And that's essentially what it did for us. It ended up adding up all of the variables that we wanted. We can add more variables into x. So we can say x dot append 100. We'll then add x again. And now it's 110 because we added 100 into that list. Now it's adding 100 as well as all of the other numbers in the list that we've just created. All right. So another thing that we can do in Python is that everyone essentially, we can write our own functions for everything, but there are a lot of people that write a lot of cool stuff for us. You know, there are people who are way smarter than I am, who write their own functions and share that code with everyone. And those packages are called libraries and packages and stuff like that. And you can use these packages to help better your code. So we're going to use a package that I usually use a lot called random. Random is a package that allows for you to create random numbers. All right, and this can be used in a lot of fun ways. So in order to import the random package, you have to say, you just type in import and then random. All right, so we're going to create a random integer. All right, so in order to use the random function or random package, we'll create a variable, let's say randx. And we're going to make that equal to random, and you're going to do random dot rand int, and then we're going to say, let's say 1, between 1 and 200. All right, so let's see what random number it gave us. 162. Now, if you were to have run this particular line of code, it might not have given you 126. It might have given you another number. Let's run it again just to see what it gives you. Now it gives you 22. So it allows for you to create random numbers. And this is very helpful. So like if you're making a video game and you say, okay, I want to make a random die. I want to make it so that, you know, they click a button and it randomly makes a die. I can change it to 6. Now you're actually creating a random die roll at this point. It's creating different numbers that you can use. All right, that's one way. That's one package that I use a lot, and it's very helpful in a lot of stuff that I've used when I program and make games and things of that nature. All right. So another thing that you can do is create these things called classes. Now, classes are a very complicated concept in programming, so I don't expect people to get it on the first go around. But a class essentially is a way for individuals to organize their code in such a way so that they can keep everything in a particular packet or keep everything in a particular component. It becomes difficult writing programs where you're calling in functions from all of these different places. And there's a very simple way to manage all of your functions and variables in a particular way. So I'm going to leave this particular screen right now, and I'm going to go to this thing right here, which is going to be like similar thing that y'all are working off of. I'm going to open up a file called. I'm just going to no, not open a file. I'm going to create a new file. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a class called a person. All right. So first thing you're going to do is type class person, and essentially that's the name of our class. All right. We can add stuff to that class. We're going to create a init. It's called init function. Just to create. It's called the init function, but it just simply means create the object. All right. So every class has an init function that allows for you to create a particular object. So we're going to say def. We're going to define the function. We're going to do underscore underscore init underscore underscore again. And then we're going to we're going to pass in an argument called the self argument. The self argument is essentially something that refers to itself. All right, it's essentially passing itself into the function. And then we're going to add a couple of other variables. We're going to say name, and then age, and then job. All right. So in this example, we're going to create a class that has we're going to have a class that has 3 arguments. It's going to have name, age, and job. We're going to assign those variables to itself. All right. So self.name, we'll say it's going to equal name, obviously. We're going to have self.age, and that's going to equal age. And then we're going to have self.job, and that's going to equal job as well. All right. So now we're going to save that. going to save that to the desktop. And I'm going to say person. I'm going to save it as a person file. All right. So if you're able to download Python, you can be able to use this. You can click run, and you click run module. There's some balance. Okay, got a comma goes right there. All right, save it. I'm going to run it, and it does absolutely nothing because essentially we've made it to do nothing. That doesn't necessarily matter at this point, but in this file, we're going to do a couple of different things. All right, we're going to first make a name. We're going to make a person called Niall. So we're going to say person. We're going to pass in my name, which is going to be Niall. We're going to pass in my age, which is 21. We're going to pass in my job, which is going to be developer. All right. So let's make another person. Who wants to? What's name? Okay. What's your name?
Adam.
All right. So we're going to make an Adam variable. All right. So Adam's going to equal a person. Can y'all hear me without the mic? It's kind of hard to program with a mic in my hand. All right. So Adam. All right. So we're going to have Adam. We're going to have you as a person. So your name's Adam. All right. All right, so what's your age, Adam? 16. All right, so 16, and you're a student, so we're going to make that your job. All right. What's your name, sir?
Darren.
Darren? All right, so Darren, we're going to add you as a person. D-A-R-R-E-N? O-N. All right, Darren. All right, so person. So I'm not going to ask your age, sir, so I'm going to just put 21 to 22. All right, that sounds good. All right, and then we're going to say teacher for your profession, all right? So now we've created these things. We're going to save our code, and we're going to run it, all right? Now, it doesn't do anything still. It doesn't seem like we're doing anything. But what we're essentially going to do now is we have those names and those variable arguments saved to that particular person. So let's go back into this code, right? Let's say, what's Darren's name, all right? We're going to type Darren.name. We're going to say Niall.age. And we're going to say Adam.job. And now we're going to run that code. Wait. Let me print, sorry. I messed up. So we're going to print string. We're going to print a string version of Darren's name. We're going to print a string version of my age. And then we're going to print a string version of Adam's job. All right. Now, run this. Now, as you can see, we actually printed out all of that particular information. Darren's name is Darren. My age, in this case, is 21, and Adam's name is actually student, right? So that sounds very simple. We created a class, and we were able to save some of our information to that particular class. But we can do more complicated stuff with this particular structure. So let's say we can add a function to it, all right? So we're going to say resume. We're going to create a resume function, all right? And what we're essentially going to do is have the person print out, hey, my name, this is my name, this is my age, and this is what I currently do, all right? So we're going to have a def resume function. We're going to have to pass in ourself in order to actually get the variables that we assign to ourselves. So we're going to have self, and that's all we need at this particular point, all right? So now we're going to create the resume string. We're going to say resume str equals, and essentially we're going to say my name is, we're going to put that in, we're going to put curly brackets. My age is curly brackets, and my job is curly brackets. Now we're gonna make a form. We're gonna do a format. So because we put curly brackets in a way so that if we were to pass in certain variables, it could substitute those curly brackets with the variables that we created. So in this case, we're going to format, and then we're going to pass in those arguments. So we're going to pass in self.name. We're going to pass in self.age, and then we're going to pass in self.job. All right? Then we're going to return. We're going to then return resume string to the end user. All right? So now, let's do this. We're going to replace Darren.name. We're going to call that actual function. We're going to say Darren dot resume, and then we're going to put the brackets right there. We're going to do that for everybody. All right, so now we're going to run that function, and boom, it says, my name is Darren, my age is 22, my job is teacher, my name is Adam, my age is 16, my job is student, and my name is Now, my age is 21, and my job is developer. So what you're seeing is we're able to actually add functions to this class that we've just created, and now we can create personalized information about each particular person. We don't have to create a function. We don't have to do something where we have to remember that information and pass that function around a bunch of times. We can just simply assign the function to the class, access the variables that we've just created in that same class, and then print that out and use it for other stuff. So let's say, we're going to make another function. You can actually modify the variables in this particular class. We're going to create a birthday function. And in this birthday function, when it's your birthday, you get a year older. So what we're going to be doing with the birthday function, simply adding 1 year to the person's age. And you would do that by saying, or in this case, let's make it so that we'll pass in however many number of years. It doesn't necessarily have to be 1. So we're going to have birthday. We're going to have a birthday function. We got to pass in self. And then we're going to pass in a variable called years. All right? So then we're going to say self.age equals self.age plus years. All right? And that's how it's going to work. So I'm going to pick on myself for a little bit. We're going to print, we're going to do Nile.resume. We're then going to do Nile.birthday and then pass in 100 years. And then we're going to print my resume again. No, not in this case. All right. So we're going to run it. Now, as you can see, it says, hi, my name is Now, my age is 21, and my job is developer. We then had the birthday, so we added 100 years. And now it says, my name is Now, my age is 121, and my job is developer. All right. So now you can modify these particular values, and you don't have to say Nile.age plus 100. You can just simply create that one function, pass in variables, and then it updates it so that if we have another person, let's say Adam.birthday, he's going to be we're going to be modest with Adam. He's going to just get 2 years older. All right. So we're going to print Adam.resume. We're going to run this code. And now, originally it said Adam was 16, right? We said it's 16, but instead it printed 18 because we added 2 years to Adam, and now it actually reflects that in the program, all right? So these are some of the more complex ways that we can actually make our code much more modular and allow for us to do more complex stuff and organize our code. Originally, back in the old days of programming, you couldn't do stuff like this. You would have to they actually programmed on paper back in the day. They would punch holes in pieces of paper, run it through a machine, and that's how they did their calculations. It became very difficult. To do something like this would be very difficult back in the 1950s, for example. But now, we can do something like this in a very simple fashion, all right? So, with that being said, I'm going to show an example of an Alexa skill that I built. So, I built a bunch of Alexa, or not a bunch, but a couple of Alexa skills. One Alexa skill quizzes you on math problems. So it'll randomly give you a math problem. It'll tell you the question. You answer the question. If you got it right, it says congratulations, you got it right. If you didn't get it right, it'll tell you got it wrong, and try it, and it'll give you another question. Another Alexa skill that I made was a knock-knock joke Alexa skill, because sometimes I thought I was kind of funny. I wanted to have someone to tell me a knock-knock joke. So I made a little skill. I have a video for you, and it's very simple, but it essentially tells you knock-knock jokes in the full fashion. Wait, is it?
Who's there?
Oh, let me. I think.
Who's there?
I don't know. Can y'all hear it or not? I can't. I think the volume's kind of low. But I'll show you. I can log into my developer account, and I think it's the record. I think there's a recording. Like the recording is bad. So I'm gonna go into my developer Alexa account. All right. Oh, I'm in the wrong password. Sorry. All right. Oh yeah, thanks. Thanks, Adam. All right. All right, it's gonna do this. All right. 255, 565. All right, so I'm gonna go to Alexa's. So I'm gonna actually show you the math one that I made, and then I'm gonna show you the knock-knock one that I made, and then I'll essentially show you how to make your own Alexa skill, and we're gonna test it. All right. So you can actually test your Alexa skills online, so I don't have to actually bring an Alexa with me. We're gonna type the initialization math quiz game. Sorry.
Welcome. Would you like a math problem?
All right, so I'm going to say yes.
Question. What is 77
All
divided by
right, what's 77 divided by 11? All right, so we're going to type in 11.
Question.
All right,
What is
so
6 times 3?
Oh, something happened. Oh, wait, I know what I did wrong. All right, 6 times 3, you're going to say 18.
Correct. The answer is 18. Would you like another question?
We're going to say yes. All right.
Question. What is 20
What's 20
plus
plus 20, guys? 40. All right. I forgot that you actually can't just type the number. You have to actually type the text in order to use the number. So
Correct. The answer is 40. Would you like another question?
let's go, yes. And then we're gonna,
Question. What is
I'm gonna actually get it,
25 minus 40?
I'm gonna actually get it wrong just to show you. All right,
Incorrect.
the answer is,
is 11. Would you like another question?
all right, so we're gonna say no, because we're good.
Thank
All right.
you. Goodbye.
So that's one of the Alexa skills that I was able to build. I also built this one called Nile Knock Knock just to see how it would work. Can't remember the invocation. So we're gonna go to test. We're gonna allow the mic. All right. So Nile joke to initialize it.
Welcome. Would you like to hear a knock knock joke?
All right. So yes. All right.
Okay. Knock knock.
Who's there? Who's there?
Alex.
Alex. Who?
You messed up the joke.
Oh wait, I messed up the joke. All right. So let's try it again. So, okay. Nile joke.
Welcome. Would you like to hear a knock knock joke? Okay. Knock knock. Orange. Aren't you glad I didn't say banana? Would you like to hear another one?
We'll go again. All right.
Okay. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Alex. You messed up the
Wait,
joke.
how did I mess up the joke?
I think you gotta capitalize on it.
Let me try it. Nile. I wonder what happened.
Capitalize the name.
No, I think.
Would you like to hear knock knock? Okay. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Cargo.
Cargo wall.
Cargo beep beep. Room room. Would you like to hear another one?
Listen, I think I know what I did
Knock
wrong.
knock.
Who's there?
Orange.
Orange. Orange who? We already know that. Orange is bad.
All right.
Aren't you glad I didn't say banana? Would you like to hear another one?
All right.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
All right, so this was a knock knock joke app that I essentially made. I was like, I want to test a little bit some code, and I'm going to go and show you kind of what I did to make this particular skill. And we can actually do this in a collaborative sense. We can essentially get together and work on this skill together. All right, so I'll get y'all's feedback, and we'll program this, and we'll have those reflected on the internet. All right, so I'm going to use this particular function. All right. So the first thing that I did was there's this library called Flask. All right. Now let me explain something about an Alexa skill. An Alexa skill is something that allows for you to connect your Alexa device to an actual website. So it creates this interface, or this program rather, that allows for when you talk to your Alexa skill, the Alexa skill says, all right, you told me something. I'm going to send that message to your website, and I'm going to wait for a response from your website to send a message back to me, and then it's going to actually return that message to you in however you've programmed it. All right? So with that being said, the first thing that you're going to need is you're going to need a website. You're going to need something that actually allows for Alexa to accept those particular messages. All right? So in this case, I already have the code written out, but I'm going to rewrite the code and reflect to the previous code that I wrote so that we can go through the process. All right? So the first thing that I did was I imported this thing called Flask. So I said from Flask, import Flask. Now Flask is essentially, it's a library like Random. So we have the Random library, and we have the Flask library. The Flask library allows for us to create websites with Python. All right? So we imported that. The next thing that I'm going to import is this thing called Flask Ask. Now Flask Ask allows for us to connect the website to Alexa. All right? So from Flask ask, we're going to import a couple of things. We're going to first import this thing called ask, and that just simply allows for us, that does all the heavy lifting when it comes to the connection. The second thing that we're going to import is question. The question is a function in the Flask library that basically allows for us to ask questions with Alexa. So remember in the example, knock knock. That's essentially invoking a question, and it's waiting for your response. All right. So you have to import the question function, and then the last function that we're going to import is this function called statement. Now, statement essentially is like question, where it returns a particular answer, but the difference is that statement does not invoke a question. It doesn't expect a response. It just simply makes a statement and then cuts off the connection. All right? So in the knock knock joke example, we essentially we would ask for the knock knock joke, and then whenever it said that we messed up the joke, it ended the session. But whenever it said, would you like another joke, it was waiting for us to answer yes or no in order for us to start over again. So the statement allows for you to end the session at a particular case. All right? So let me go back to my code. We're going to also import another thing. All right, so we're going to import this thing called random. All right, as I mentioned before, random allows for you to randomly select things. And what essentially it was doing was it had a list of knock knock jokes, and it said, all right, I'm going to pick a random knock knock joke and give that to the end user. All right, so we're going to go into, we need these three libraries, and that's what's essentially going to allow us to do everything that we need. So the first thing that we're going to do is create our app. The app is just simply the application that we want to create, essentially. It's going to contain all of our more detailed stuff as we're building out the Alexa skill. So we're going to create an app, and app is going to equal Flask name. All right? Now, where you see it says app equals Flask name, it's doing a couple of things in this one particular function. The first thing it's doing is getting the Flask object. So remember earlier when we created the person object, we would say person, and then we pass in these arguments. That's essentially what's happening here. Flask is creating a Flask object, and it's passing in this object, or it's passing an argument named name. Name in this case is the actual name of the file. So we don't have to type in the name of the file. We don't even really care what the name of the file is. If we use this argument name, it essentially substitutes the name of the file for that particular variable right there. So we don't have to worry about that. All right? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to link the Alexa skill with the app that we just created. So we're going to create a thing called ask, and it's going to say ask equals ask, and we're going to pass in two arguments. All right. The first argument that we're going to pass in is the previously made app. So we're going to pass in the app, and then we're going to create another argument, and this is going to be the route. So whenever you go on to Facebook, for example, you go to facebook.com / a particular, like pictures, or for example, right? So if you go to facebook.com / pictures, the / pictures is essentially the route to the website that we're on. And when we're creating this website, we're just going to be creating a new route, and we're going to call this route game. So we're just going to call it, we're going to say quotation marks / game, and that's essentially going to create the route in which we're able to build all of this fun stuff that we're going to do. All right? So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start making some jokes, all right? So we're going to have a thing called jokes. And remember, we're going to start in a dictionary. So what we want to do is, whenever you say knock-knock joke, you have two parts to every knock-knock joke. You have what you would call the hook and the punchline, right? So the hook in this case is that one word or a couple words that you say that is associated with the knock-knock joke. So when you say knock-knock, who's there? Orange. Orange is the hook, and then orange, you glad I didn't say banana is the punchline. So I'm going to ask for you guys to give me some hooks and some punchlines for the knock-knock jokes. So who has a knock-knock joke, actually? You got a knock-knock joke? No? Knock-knock? All right, so what's the knock-knock joke?
Yeah, that's funny.
All right, I gotta think. I'm trying to think. All right, you got a knock-knock joke? All right, cool. All right, so you're just gonna tell me the hook,
Okay.
which is whatever the word is, and then the punchline. All right.
The hook is taco,
Taco.
and the punchline is talk about rude.
Taco about rude. All right. So who else has a knock-knock joke? Who else? Anybody else got a knock-knock joke? You got a knock-knock joke? No? All right. How about this? Y'all look up some knock-knock jokes.
Yeah.
All right? So we can start making this amazing Alexa skill, all right? So, I'm going to say a knock-knock joke that I might do. I'm trying to think of one now. I'm like, yeah, I know. I didn't think. All right, I'm going to go back with the original knock-knock jokes that we had. Yeah, I actually had that one. So I'm going to copy that one.
Ooh, but I didn't know it was.
Why are you crying?
All right, so we got two knock-knock jokes. So anybody else got some knock-knock jokes? All right, you got a knock-knock joke. Knock-knock, who's there? Wait, the knock-knock joke? Calluses? Wait, spell that, sorry. Cow? Cow says, okay. And it's okay, Cal says who? Cal says moo. All right.
Oh, that's cute.
All right. So we got any more knock-knock jokes?
Open up.
You have a knock-knock joke. All right, what's your knock-knock joke? Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Could you? Oh, you can speak up. Okay. All right. Okay, knock knock, who's there? A little old lady. A little old lady who, all this time, I had no idea you could yodel. All right, so we're going to go with that one. That seems pretty funny. Little old lady.
Oh, oh wow.
All right, so anybody have any more knock-knock jokes that we can use?
Wanda.
Wanda? All right.
Wanda.
Wanda?
And then open the door and you'll find out. No, that's awful. That's Wanda. Oh, this is
All right.
Oh. Robin.
Robin? Wait, what?
Robin, you now hand over the cash.
Okay, I see.
Oh, Robin. Oh, I got it. Robin. Robin, you.
All right, so I think we have some good knock-knock jokes right now. I'm going to copy over some of the previous knock-knock jokes from over here. and add those in to the knock-knock jokes that we just created. All right. All right. So we have our knock-knock jokes. Now we're going to start building out the Alexa skill. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need something to initialize or to start the conversation. So whenever you own an Alexa, you're going to say, "Hey Alexa, something, something, the name of this app." All right. And you need something to, what they say is invoke, essentially wake up Alexa and then tell them what app that you want to get connected to. All right. So we're going to create that by going ask @ask.launch skill. This is essentially us going to launch the skill. Whenever we want it to launch the skill, we're going to run this particular function. All right. So we're going to say run def run skill. All right. So what do y'all think that the knock knock joke thing should say when you want to run this skill? Like, I would say, "What's up? You want a knock knock joke?" We can say that. All right. So we're going to have a message. We're going to make that equal to "What's up? You want to hear a knock knock joke?" And remember, when we imported the question, we're going to essentially return the question, and then we're going to pass in the message that we just created. All right? So when you're building an Alexa skill, you might say some stuff, right? You're going to say some things like, "You want a knock-knock joke?" "Yeah, sure. What's up?" Like, "Yeah, I love a knock-knock joke," right? There are a lot of things that you can say in response to this question. But essentially, when it asks you, "Do you want a knock-knock joke?" there are two intentions, there are two statements that you can intend to mean. You can intend, "Yes, I want a knock-knock joke," or "No, I don't want a knock-knock joke." So there are many things you can say, but we still have two intents. So in this case, we're going to create an intent. The intent is a term that describes what you actually mean by what you say. All right. So in this case, we're going to say @ask, and then we're going to say .intent. In Alexa, you have to end every intent with the word intent. So what you're going to see me type is something of what we're going to say yes intent. All right. So this is whenever we say something that really means yes, we want to make sure that this code runs. All right. So that's what we're going to do. Now, this function is going to run whenever we say yes. In this case, we're going to say def. We're going to run yes intent. We're going to make that function. All right. Now, we got these knock-knock jokes. We want it to tell us we got these knock-knock jokes. Whenever we say yes, every knock-knock joke starts with knock-knock. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to create message. We're going to make that equal to knock-knock. And then we're going to return that question, because essentially, even though it's a statement, it's still asking for us to say something, you know? It's going to ask for us to say who's there. So we're still going to return it as a question, all right? So we're going to say return the question of the message that we just created, which is knock knock, all right? So we have the yes intent. What if somebody says no, right? Somebody's like, "I don't want it, I just asked for you to tell me a knock-knock joke. I don't want you to tell me a knock-knock joke, all right? Just leave it as it is." We can do a no intent, right? So this is when somebody's like, "No, nah, I'm good," So we're going to have ask.intent, And then we're going to have what's called a no intent. All right? Now, we're going to then say, all right, whenever no is the intent, we're going to run this no function. All right? So we're going to have a def no intent. And we'll be a little fancy. What we're going to do for the no intent is we're going to have a list of we're going to have a list of things that it could possibly say as no, right? It gets kind of boring hearing Alexa say the same thing over and over again. We can be fancy and say, all right, I thought you would have wanted a knock-knock joke, but never mind. Have a good day. We could say something like that. So we're going to have a variable. We're going to call it a list of no's, or a list of responses. All right? We can put whatever we want. So we're like, okay, one way is like, have a good day. Another thing that it could say to us is, why, I thought you wanted a knock-knock joke, but never mind. We can say something like that. I thought and we can do a third one. We're going to say, well, that's the end of my joke. Or we can say that. That's the end of it all. All right. So that is the end of it all. All right. So we have our list of responses. So what we're going to do next is we're going to randomly pick one of these responses. All right. Now, in Python, when I was talking about a list, you have all of these items in a list. If you want to get an item out of that list, you have to use the number, which is the index of that particular list. The thing about Python is that Python is kind of quirky. Everything starts at 0. So if you want to get the first thing in the list, you have to use 0 to get the first thing. If you want to get the second thing, you use the number 1. So on and so forth. All right? Now, because of that, we're going to get a response, and we're going to set that variable. We're going to use list of responses. So we have list of responses. And then we're going to use the bracket notation to get whatever we want out of the list. All right? So we want it to be random. We don't want it to just simply give us the same thing over and over and over again. So what we're going to do is we're going to do random, as we did earlier, random.randint. And we're going to pass in 2 numbers. The first number is going to be 0 because that's the beginning of the list. All right? And then the second thing we're going to do is pass in 2 because 2 is the end of the list because we have the 0th element, the first element, and then the second element. There's 2, so there's 3 items, but 0, 1, and 2. All right? So we're going to pass in the second argument, which is 2. What this guarantees is that every time this code is run, it's going to give us a random thing in this list. All right? Now, this is cool, but let's say you add multiple things. You add some more things into the list of responses. If we were to add something else, let's say, bye, Felicia. Like at the, we add that into the list, right? Well, we have a predicament. We have a predicament because now we don't have just 3 elements in that list. We have 4, right? So we're going to have to update this part right here, the list of responses function, where we pass in the 0 and the 2. But what if we forget to do that? Bye, Felicia will never be said to the end user. So what we're going to do is do something a little bit different. Instead of passing in 2 as a second number, we're going to use this function called len, L-E-N. Len is essentially going to get any list of things and count how many things are in that list and then return that to the user. So if we pass in len and then list of responses, we're essentially going to get the function that we're then calling random.randIt is going to get two arguments, 0, which is the first argument, and whatever the length of that list is. All right? So because the list is 4 items long, it'll give you a number between 0 and 4. But here's the problem. You can't actually index with 4 because 4 would actually not be within the list because it's 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So in order to make sure that it gives us numbers that are actually within the list, we're going to do -1 because we're going to just subtract 1 from the length of the list that we just created. So right here, this line of code, what it's essentially doing is saying, hey, whatever the length of that list is, give me that number -1, pick a random number between 0 and that number that we just created, and then use that number to get something from the list of responses and then save it to the variable named response. All right? And because they said no, we're going to end the conversation there. So what we're going to do is in return the statement, the response that we've just created. All right, so now we're going to go back to the knock-knock joke, or the knock-knock joke flow, right? So we say yes, and it says knock-knock. The next thing that we're going to say when it says knock-knock is who's there, right? So what we're going to have is a who's there intent, because what you're intending to say is who's there, all right? So we're going to ask.intent who's there intent. And then we're going to create a function called who is there intent. All right. So whenever we say who's there, what we expect is the hook. All right. We expect the thing to tell us what the hook is. All right. So in this case, we need to look at this list right here. So we have the jokes right here. We have the keys and we have the values. And what we're going to need to do is make sure that we get the keys and tell that hook, or tell that hook name to the end user. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to reference that variable that we just made earlier, the jokes variable that we just made. We're going to reference that in this particular function. So what we're going to say is, okay, we want a hook name. And we're going to get that we're going to make that equal to, we're going to equal that to something. All right. But let's back up a little bit. All right. Now, earlier I had mentioned in order to get a value from a dictionary, you pass in the key name, right? So if we had a dictionary that had name as the key and then my name as the value, in order to get my name, you pass in the word name. But I didn't tell y'all how to actually get the keys from the dictionary, because you can get a dictionary and not know what's actually in the dictionary. So the way that you do that is by saying we're going to create a thing called list of hooks. And what we're going to do is reference the jokes, dot, and then we're going to call this function called keys. What that will do is essentially give us the dictionary that we've created, go through all of the keys, and then give us a list of all of the keys in that dictionary. So we have all the keys right here. So now when we're going to go to hook name, we're going to do the same thing that we did up here when it came to getting the list of responses. We want to get a random hook. So what we're going to do is we're going to say list of hooks, open bracket, random.randInt 0, and then we're going to get the length of the list of hooks minus 1. All right, so now we have the hook name, right? Have the hook name. Now, the last thing we need to do in this particular part is return that hook name to the end user. So we're going to say return question, because essentially we're asking a question, all right? And then we're going to say hook name. Now, next thing in a knock-knock joke is, guess what? So we say, knock, knock, who's there? Orange. Orange who? Right? So we say orange who, right? Now, this is complicated because when we were originally creating the intent, there were words that we've already had associated with those particular things. If we say hi or yes, it already knows that. But we have blank who, any particular word, and who. We have to make sure that we are aware that what it's saying, that it understands what we're saying when we say blank who. We need to make sure we get whatever that word is before who and pass it into our function, all right? So essentially the intent, whenever we say blank who, that's our intent, right? So the intent is blank who. Blank who intent. Now, we're going to create the function blank who intent. And what we need something that actually has that, what the hook is, right? So for this purpose, we're just going to create a variable called hook name, because that's what we're saying. We're saying the hook name, right? So we're going to pass in a variable called hook name. All right? So what's the hook name variable? Well, the hook name variable is one of these variables that we've just said earlier. So we're going to use that variable hook name, and we're going to get the punchline. So we're going to have an argument called punchline, and it's going to equal jokes, and in the bracket, we're going to pass in the hook name. All right? So by doing that, we're actually able, because remember this same syntax is what we use to get variables from this dictionary up here. So we pass in the hook name, and guess what? Now we got the punchline. The punchline is right there. So all we need to do now is return the punchline to the end user. So what we're going to do is we're going to type return question, and then we're going to pass in the punchline. And then we're going to add something to the string. We're going to add the question asking them if they want another joke. All right? So we're going to ask, would you like another joke? All right. So right now, we essentially have all of the elements associated with our knock-knock joke Alexa skill. And we're going to then be pushing that. I'm not sure how much time we have right now. Okay, it's 11:17. But so I think y'all have lunch at 12, right?
I believe it's 12 or 12:30.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to finish building out all the components of the skill, and if we're able to push it online, I'll show you the process of putting it online, and then we can test it out. But if not, y'all have lunch, and then we'll go back to finishing that over after lunch, all right? So right now we have all of the components of our knock-knock joke, Alexa skill. So we're going to add a couple of additional things in order to make sure that it actually works when we put it online. So the first thing is we're going to have this thing called app. We're going to add a route, and this is just an index route. So whenever you access a website called facebook.com, you see / and then blank, right? Just nothing but a /. That is what what many people call the index page. And in order for us to have a website online, we need to make sure we have an index page. In this case, we're just going to have a simple index page. We're going to call it index. And we're going to print to the screen. We're going to return to the screen, hi mom, because it's always nice to say hi to your mom. So we're going to say hi mom, and that's going to be it. So we have our route, and that's it. I'm going to copy and paste this part right here at the end and explain what that is. So essentially not this. All right, so the last part that I added in is just a simple thing saying, hey, run the app when it's online if the name of the file is main. The thing is that when you're using, you can import files from different parts of code, and there's some times where you don't actually want other files to be running. You only want the main file to be running. This essentially makes it so that only the main file is running. So if the name of the file is main, which it is it's the main file, run the app and then just tell us if there are any errors with our code whenever we have them. All right. So I'm going to copy all this. All right, I'm going to save this. So I'm going to do, all right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You want to take a break right now?
Okay, we're going to have a 10-minute break. So if you need to use the restroom, get up and stretch, do that now. 10 minutes. Restroom, water, buy something. Check your messages, make a phone call. Do that now.
I was in high school, and this is a sad story, but I was in high school and I wanted to be a teacher. And
my teacher told me that she'd be a teacher, that it's a bad idea. And I was like, oh snap, I don't know what else to do than be a teacher. So, because I never really, like, all my, like, my parents, like, my grandmother's a teacher, my dad, he does teaching, you know, exactly, you know, so it's like, and even, like, in my neighborhood, all the people got bachelor's degrees and stuff like that. They were all in teaching. I never knew somebody that didn't go to college and wasn't a teacher. So I was like, oh snap, like what am I supposed to do? So I was like, I'm hearing all these kids talk about engineering and stuff like that. You know, let me look up what that is. You know, so I started looking up what engineering is. And I was like, okay, this engineering stuff seems pretty cool, but it's kind of hard for me to do it. You know, because you gotta have a lot of money to build like all this technology, right? And I was like, well, computer science seems pretty cool. Like all I need is a computer. I already got a computer. I can download the stuff, and I started downloading the stuff and started teaching myself. And after 16, I was like, yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I go to UV. Yeah, 40 minutes. So I went to, for high school, I went to Shaolin College High School. But I went to a lot. Last year I went to Gregor Elementary. I went to private school for like 2 years. I went to a kids' school for a couple of years. Oh man, that's I don't I prefer HCC schools over kids schools. And it's different because at least the kids school I went to, everybody was like, it was like you were hard on you, you know, you gotta make sure. This school's a communal disciplinary school, so like one kid got in trouble, everybody got in trouble because it's like it's a community. You can't have one person get in trouble and not everybody else. You know? That sucks for me because I was never a kid getting in trouble, so it was like, getting in trouble for all this stuff. You know, that's what life is like. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think in hindsight, I understood the reason, but I really was like, that's way above my pay grade. I don't get paid to be encouraging kids not to do bad stuff. So I was just like, not really. But I did like HIC. Only one. Kind of, but so we didn't do model units specifically, but we did like maybe about policy, figure Lincoln how this could be, do something. Oh yeah. Yeah. I actually didn't have any classes. I understand. I wish I had more opportunity to learn stuff like this. Well, I work in a oh, that's cool. That's it's great because this stuff is I met this guy. He made a chocolate that allows me to help people through the immigration immigration. And so
sign in.
There's this person who made this chatbot that helps people with file configuration and stuff like that. It's like, heck, we might not even need lawyers. You know, just if you can do it online, why do you need lawyers? You know, especially the ways that they charge you. All these expenses. All right, let me get back. Yes. All right. I'm gonna get back to it. All right. All right, everyone. So
Let's settle back in, guys.
All right, so we essentially have built the Alexa skill, and it's great to program it, but we need to make sure that we know how to actually put this stuff online so that it doesn't just sit on our computer and do nothing. We want to make an impact with our knock knock joke skill that we made together. So essentially, I'm gonna show you the process of how I put this online, and then we can test it out to see if it works or not. And I think when we're done with that, it'll bring us to lunch. All right. All right, so with this, I'm going to save it into a. I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this file into. Save it to desktop. I create a new folder called New Skill. I'm going to save it. It's going to be called app.py. All right, so it does all the formatting for us and stuff. All right, so. All right, so we saved it. I'm going to open up that folder that we just created just so that we can see it. So there are a couple of things that we need to add into this file in order to make sure, we need to add a couple of things into this project in order to make sure that it works when we put it online. So the first thing that we're going to do, create a new file. It's going to be called runtime.txt. Essentially what runtime.txt is going to do is going to make sure that we're using the right version of Python. So I'm gonna reference the previous code that I wrote. In our runtime we said Python 2.7.15. I'm gonna copy that. All right, so I'm going to create the runtime.txt file that says we're going to run Python 2.7. There's different versions of Python. We want to make sure that we're using the right version of Python when we deploy this stuff online. So we're going to save that. Second thing that we're going to need is this file called requirements.txt. So requirements essentially tells the server, the place where we're storing our code, is going to tell us what files we're going to need to be included in our program. So the first thing that we're going to need to include is the program called Flask. So we're going to just type Flask right here. The second thing that we're going to need is this thing called Gunicorn. So Gunicorn is a thing that allows for us to run Python on the server. So we're going to import that thing called Gunicorn. The third thing that we're going to need is the program that this thing called Flask Ask. That's the library that we're using that allows for us to connect the Flask web app to the Amazon server. So we're going to type in Flask Ask. The last thing that we're going to need is this thing called cryptography, and we're going to need a specific version of this cryptography library called 2.1.4. This is not necessary to know why we need it, not actually sure why we need it myself, but we need to make sure that this is there in order for it to communicate with the Amazon server. All right. The last thing that we're going to need is this thing called proc file. So the proc file essentially is the file that allows for us to run the code on the server. So whenever someone accesses the server, the server is going to say, all right, so they access this URL, what's the proc file? The proc file is going to give me the instructions on how to run the code. So we're going to save that as proc file. All right, so with all that out of the way, we have all of the basic parts to build the skill that we need. The next thing that we're going to need is now to go to our terminal. So we got this weird, this looks like what the hackers use to like do their espionage and stuff like that. What I'm going to do, let's clear the screen. I'm going to go to the, so I'm going to go, whenever you initialize the command prompt, you're probably going to see something like this. It says my name because that's the name of my computer. I'm going to change it to the desktop. I'm going to CD. It means change directory. That means it allows for you to go into a folder or a file. So I'm going to change the directory, and we're going to go to the desktop folder because that is where our Alexa skill is located. All right. We're then going to we're going to CD into the new skill folder because we created a folder called new skill. All right, so now we're in the directory that we need. I'm going to exit from here for a little bit and then go to this service that we're called Heroku. Now Heroku is a way that allows for us to create websites and put them online. All right, so it gives you up to 5 free websites that you can actually build. So after this presentation, if you want to actually put this skill on online, you can do that. All right. So we're going to create a new Heroku app. We're going to create a new app, and we're going to call it UB Knock Knock. Upward bound. I'm going to say upward bound knock knock, but we're going to call it UB Knock Knock. All right. So we're going to call it UB Knock Knock. All right. That's right. All right. So I'm going to be the app owner, and then we're going to create the app. All right. So the app is now created, but we don't have the code from our computer on the server. So now we're going to go back to our terminal. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to log into Heroku. Now, before you can log into Heroku, you have to download this thing called Heroku CLI. All right. So you would go to your Google, you type in Heroku CLI, and you would download this particular thing. I already have it downloaded on my computer, so I'm not going to re-download it. But I'm just showing you so that you can know that if you want to, in order to do these steps, you got to download this. The next thing that you're also going to need to download is this thing called Git. Git essentially allows for you to get your code from one place to another place. I don't know if that's why they named it Git, but it sounds kind of funny, so I kind of go with that. So you go to this website in order to download Git. All right, I already have it downloaded, so you don't need to. So I'm not going to download it, but essentially download it. Click yes for everything for both the Heroku and Git, and it will work just fine. So with that all out of the way, we're now going to log into Heroku. All right, so we're in the folder called New Skill. We're going to log into Heroku by typing in Heroku login. It's going to ask you to press any key. I'm going to press any key. It's going to open up your browser. I'm going to log in, and boom, I'm logged in. Great. So we're going to go back to our terminal. So
What we're going to do is we're going to type in get status. Or no, we're going to type in get init. What get init does, it says, all right, we want to make a Git repository on our computer. We want to make sure that we're following the code that you're editing. So we're going to create an empty folder that tracks what changes you're making to your code, so that when you save it, it makes sure it only changes the code that you saved, and not, or it saves the code that you changed, and not everything all over again. So you're going to initialize an empty Git repo. The second thing that you're going to do is check the status of your Git repo. What your Git repo status does is it tells you a couple of things. The first thing that it tells you is what files are already up to date. That means you never made any changes to those codes. The second thing it's going to tell you is going to tell you what code you changed, but what code is not a new file. So you might make a change to a file. It'll tell you, here are the files that you've added to your Git repo before, but you've made changes to. The third thing it's going to tell you is going to tell you files that are not tracked. These are files that you haven't added to your Git repo. So in order to save our code, we need to make sure that we actually add these files to our Git repo. And you do that by simply typing git add and then the name of the file. So we're going to add app.py. We're going to git add requirements. We're going to git add runtime. And then we're going to git add proc file. All right. So we added them to our Git repo. The next thing that we're going to do now is we're going to git commit or git push them. No, sorry, git commit. Git commit basically says, all right, so we've added these files. We need to essentially put them in a box and then it's like signing a check, right? So if you want to write a check to somebody, the first thing you do is you add money to your bank account, right? So you add money to your bank account if you don't have it in your bank account. Second thing that you need to do is sign the check. And on your check, it essentially says the money that you put on it, and it's going to tell you the reason for the check, right? So if you want to commit your code, you have to type git commit. You're going to put / or -m, and then you're going to type out the reason for why you want to commit your code. So I'm going to just say initial commit because it's the first commit. And now it's actually done all that stuff for us. All right? Now, the next thing we need to do, though, is we're going to push our code. But before we push our code, we need to make sure that we know who we're pushing our code to. So where we're pushing our code is to this server. We created this thing called ub-knock-knock. So we logged in, and now we need to copy this thing. We're going to do, since we're pushing to a Heroku server, we're going to say Heroku get semicolon. We're next going to say remote. And then we're going to say add origin, or sorry, I'm not going to add remote ub-knock-knock. ub-knock-knock. Now, what we essentially typed is we typed in Heroku, which tells us we want to push our code to the Heroku server. We want to use Git in order to push our code to the server. We're going to remotely put the code in, and what we use the A, which means app, and then ub-knock-knock. We named the app ub-knock-knock, so we want to make sure that the app that we're pushing to is the app that we have the name for. So that's what we do right there. Now, we're then going to finally push our code to Heroku by typing git push Heroku master. All right, so a lot of stuff is going to pop up.
but I'm going to explain what git push Heroku master is. So when you create your check, I gave you the example of the check. You write your purpose of the check, and you put the money on it. Push is essentially like handing somebody that check, right? So I'm going to push this check onto you, right? So git push allows for you to put that code to where you go. Heroku is the name of the server that we're trying to push to. So we're pushing to Heroku. Master is the main branch, so to speak, of where the code resides. You can manage your code in a way that allows for you to put it in different branches. This is beneficial because, let's say, you have a group project, and one person's pushing one code, one person's pushing another code, and the code come in conflict with each other. If you manage your code in such a way, it allows for you to version your code so that one person's code doesn't mess up somebody else's code. So it allows for you to save branches, but the master branch is like the main branch. It's like the root of the tree, all right? So it's up on GitHub, and now we want to see if it works. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to this URL just to make sure that all of our code is working. Oh, there's an application error. So we're going to see what, this is great. So we're going to see what the issue is that we came across. So we're going to say Heroku log. In order to find issues in your code, we're going to type in Heroku log, and we're going to type in tails. And then we're going to see, yes, I meant. So we're going to see, Heroku logs tail. So we're going to actually see what the issue was when we were pushing, all right? So now we see all this code, and it's just essentially is going to tell us what our issue is, all right? So ask object has no attribute launch scale. All right, so this is the error that we see right here. This is the ask object has no attribute launch scale. Let me see why it says that. Okay, it's not ask.launch skill, it's ask.launch. So we're going to change that, which was the error that we saw in our code. We're going to ask.launch instead of ask.launch skill. So now we made an update to our code. So in order to change it, we got to go back to our terminal, and we're going to go through the process again. So I'm going to Control C. All right, so we're going to get status. And as you see, a lot of the files that we had originally, they're not up there. It's just one file that says app.py because we changed the app.py file. So now we don't have to upload everything. All we have to do is upload that one file that we changed. So we're going to get add app.py. We're going to get commit fixed error. Then we're going to get push Heroku master. It's going to re-upload all of our code. Should take a little bit quicker. All right, so all that out of the way, refresh, and guess what? Remember when we set that index file says hi mom? There it is. It says hi mom. So now we're done with the second part. The last part we're going to do is connect the app to Amazon in order for us to do our knock-knock jokes. So we're going to go to this developer account. We're going to go to your skills. So we want to create a skill. So what we're going to do is we're going to click Create Skill, this button right here. And we're going to enter a skill name. So in this case, we're going to call it UB Knock Knock. All right, and it's going to be a custom skill. We're going to create that skill. We're going to start from scratch because we don't need any of these particular things right here. Now we're at this part. Now this is the home stretch. Like once we get past this part, we'll have our new Alexa skill online. All right? So first thing is the invocation. We got to create something that starts the knock knock joke skill. So what we're going to do is we're going to say the invocation is going to be Nile Adam, just because it gives us some issues when I say knock knock because they already have a programmed knock knock joke part. So we got to use a different invocation name so that it knows we want them to use our app. All right? So we're going to say Nile Adam. So what this means is when you get your Alexa and you want it to use this app, you just basically say, hey Alexa, Nile Adam, and then it's going to start this thing. All right? So that's good. Now we got to build in our intents. These were the things that we were declaring in our code earlier, right? So the first intent that we had our yes intent, all right? So we're going to create a custom intent called yes intent. All right? And now they're going to ask for what's called sample utterances. An utterance is something that you say that fulfills this particular intent. All right? So for yes, how do some people say yes? Some people say yes. Some people say sure. Some people say yeah. All right? Those are our sample utterances. And some people actually say yes. All right? So some people say that, all right? So those are our sample utterances, and those are what's going to invoke the yes intent. All right? Now, we're going to have our no intent. This is what we're going to need for, this is essentially when we say no, we don't want one. So we can be like, no, nah, nah fam, I'm good. And we could say, not today. So, all right. So those are our no utterances. The next one that we created in our app, we had our yes intent, we had our no intent. And then we had our who's there intent. So the who's there intent, we're going to create that. All right, so knock knock, we say who's there, all right? So we say who is there? Who's there? All right, so those are the two sample utterances that you say when someone says knock knock, who's there, who is there, all right? We're just going to keep it simple for that one. And then we have our last intent, which is the blank who intent. All right? Now, the blank who intent is very simple. It's blank who, right? But the thing is, we can't just put blank who. We actually have to have some things that one person can say. But we don't know what they're going to say. So we're essentially going to create this argument. It's going to be called what we call the hook name. We set the hook name earlier, so we're going to put hook name in here, and then who. Boom. Hook name who. All right? Now, the problem is that it's like, okay, what's the hook name? You have these things called slot types. It's like, what's the slot type? So slot types in Amazon are essentially different things that you can say that, or different groups of words and characters. So, for example, a date would be a slot type. You know, it knows this is a date. You know, or actor names. It knows what actors there are, or book names. There are different types of slots that you can use so that if you were to create an Alexa skill for buying a book, You can say, can you purchase the name of the book? And you don't have to know what the name of the book is. You just have it use these slot types in order to recognize books in general. So, but we have our own Alexa skill, so we got to create our own slot type, right? So, we got to create our own slot type. So we're going to add a slot type. We're going to make a custom type, and it's going to be called hook name. Because we have our own hook names. So the hook names that we're going to put in here are the ones that we've created in this thing right here. So we're going to have taco. We had boo, Cal says. A little old lady. Wanda, Robin, Orange. Robin. Cargo. Oh, wait. I think we got taco. Yeah, you got taco. Alex. Hike and Alex. All right, cool. All right. So we have our hook names. Now we're going to go back to the blank who intent. Where it says hook name, we're going to pick the slot type that we just created called hook name. Boom. All right. So now we have all of the intents. All right. Now we have all of the intents right here. We have all of the intents right here. Last thing we're going to need to go is go to endpoint. Now, because we have a website, we're going to use this thing called HTTPS. And then we're going to get this URL right here. And then plop it right here, /game, because that's what we made the route to be. As you can see here, we made the route game, so we're going to keep it game right here. All right? So all that's good. We're going to save those endpoints. And now we're going to go to invocation. And then we're going to click this thing called save model. So we're going to save it. And now we're going to build the model. So this is essentially going to connect and make sure that everything's working. After this, we're going to test it and see if it works. It's going to take a while to build, but everything should be. All right, so it built the model. We're going to test it. All right, let's see. Hopefully it works. We're going to develop it, and we're going to invoke it by saying Nile Atom.
There was a problem communicating with the requested skill.
Oh, there's an issue. So I'm going to say logs tail. I'm going to see what the issue is. There's an issue. Is it the red ones? No, it's not. It's not. It's down here. Okay, it doesn't have. Let's try it.
There was a problem communicating with the requested skill.
So I think we're gonna break for lunch, I guess, and then I'll see what the issue is and I'll explain it. Oh, it's not? Okay. All right.
Yeah, he became a slight problem. Oh, goodness. All right. All right. Let's see if that was.
What's up?
All right, it is up. So I figured out the issues, kind of minor, but so it's asking us, you want a knock joke, guys?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll say sure.
Knock knock.
Oh,
Cargo.
Cargo.
Cargo beep beep. Vroom vroom.
See?
Would you like another joke?
So today, everybody, we just built our first Alexa skill. So, yeah, we'll hear it now.
Knock knock. Hi.
Haiku.
I didn't know you loved Japanese poetry. Would you like another joke?
Haiku. Yes. That's not really the one we made.
Yeah, that was one we made.
Alex.
I'm trying to get to one that.
There was a problem with the
What?
student's response.
I think that one's glitched.
Alex never did.
All right, so
What's up? You want to hear a knock? Knock knock. Alex.
this is the first one.
Cargo.
I'm gonna just go through.
Alex.
No,
Orange.
no, I don't want to hear that.
Hi.
I'm trying to get to one that y'all said. So,
Food.
There's who. That's one.
Why are you crying? It is just a joke. Would you like another joke? Knock knock. Robin.
That's one of yours. That's yours. Yes, mine.
Robin.
Robin,
Now
behind the
hand over
cashew.
the cash. Would you like another joke?
Yeah.
Knock knock.
That one, mine was good.
How says?
Oh, yeah, that's what it was.
How says who? Would you like another joke?
see. So today we just went through the process of building an Alexa skill. Now, Alexa skills you can use them for a lot of different things. You can make them to order Domino's pizza if you wanted to. You can have it so that you can tell it a math problem, it actually gives you the answer to that math problem. So many different things that y'all can do with this technology. If you want, during lunch, I am here. If you want to ask me any questions in general, I am here. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So your presentation is over. You through with everything that you want to do?
Yeah.
Okay. So lunch, I will take y'all a break. Lunch will be here in about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Alright? Hey, won't y'all go sit out there for a minute and just relax a little bit? Just go out there and relax.
Bust your table.
Now they don't come back in. Just they go over there and just chill for a little minute and I'll call y'all. Just leave your stuff here. Just gotta chill. I know that was not. What did you think?
It was interesting. Yeah.
By them not having the computers to be able to,
Yeah.
I think that was.
Yeah, I think it would have, because I wasn't even, the person, Ravi, he was telling me that they were going to do APPFest, and I was like, that's interesting, but I didn't even know that, was that not in the schedule?
Well, I mean, it was this supposed to be an APPFest, but is this APPFest? I mean,
It depends on how you define it.
That's what I'm saying, it's like.
I mean, we had to make do with what we do.
Yeah.
If you don't have a computer that you can download stuff and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to.
Hard to do it without the computer.
Yeah.
Question: when you were doing the command prompt, moving the file, do you have to go to the command prompt, or can you physically do it through like an online sharing?
There are some ways where you don't have to do it through the command prompt. You have to like download an application to do it. So yeah.
Kind of like how you have the web pages, the drive on your own desktop, and how you just put in files in there, and I'm like, we don't do command prompt.
No, I totally get you. Yeah.
Thank you for taking us through the steps and programming right in front of our eyes.
Which is cool.
Right.
Yeah. I just wish they had their computers, because then I think it could have been more engaging.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We just lost 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You did a good job to keep me.
Thank you. I tried. It was because that was one of the things that I was concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't even prepared for what.
No, I get you.
Yeah, so it's hard. Yeah, they don't come back and eat. I'm just waiting for the food. I'm just letting them get a little sunshine.
I appreciate y'all having me.
Oh yeah. We appreciate you. We just did. If we would have known, normally we had a computer room, so I don't know what happened with that. I think it would have been better if they be on the computer to be able to do it. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Lunch will be here in a few, and we might have enough. We'll have enough lunch. Very.
I think it's Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.